that, but this is Stacy Riggs, the firm president, and we welcome everybody to today's event. We are very appreciative of our panelists joining us in this odd time of work that we are in, and but we really think that today's event talking about true mission delivery in the face of this is very important. We have perspectives from the administration, and we have perspectives from the agencies, and between the two, I think it's a great mix of what our administration is doing to make things more, not easy, but flexible, and while still meeting the requirements of the law and regulations. And then I'm sure from Maria and Robert, we'll hear some practical information on what is being done at Customs and SBA and around the government to implement. And Jason, as always, will lead the panel in a very engaging discussion. For those of you who have been with a firm before, you know we usually do these in person, and we're very thankful you're joining us virtually. And for those of you who have not been with a firm for any of our events, we welcome you and are happy that you've joined us for this one. And all of this is made possible because of our sustaining partners who pay for these programs so that they can be helpful in the whatever climate we may be in. And a firm is a not-for-profit organization that's been around for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary, and our primary reason for being is for education for those in the area of IT who are, and for those coming into IT and associated fields in the government. And we are made up of government members, industry members, as well as academia. And we welcome any of you to come. If you're government and new, you're already a member by joining us once, and we will hope you would love to get involved more. And if you're in the industry, we're always looking for sustaining partners to help us and for giving those sustaining partners credits as they well deserve. And as this conversation is going, you will see the screenshots that we have that list out our sustaining partners. We are still delivering events, and as we go through this time, we've been doing several via Zoom and have some coming up. You can look on our affirm.org website for upcoming events to see, but I would like to give a brief shout out for our board members. We've designed a new program delivery for digital. So we're going to be having some digital series that starts in May. And we really feel that we want to spotlight what's happening behind the scenes right now. The unsung heroes of the government who are keeping things going, who are finding innovations, who are really looking at what we're doing to change. And we're going to be taking nominations for those and spotlighting folks, not just in the government, but our industry partners as well. A couple times a month through some interviews that some of our board members will be doing and having those. So keep your eye out for those. We're looking for sponsors. For those, if you are industry and would like to really get involved, those sponsors will be able to do intros and everything for those. And more importantly, if you have ideas that for really wonderful people who've done wonderful things, let us know, and we will put them in for these nominations, and we start those the middle of May. So more to come on that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason to do intros and to really get Lesley and Maria and Robert going on this wonderful discussion. So again, thank you all, and get ready. Couple little indicators on how we're going to do this. You're going to be on mute as they talk, but the chat will be open and we'll be monitoring it with questions. And you can ask those at the appropriate time. So with that, Jason, welcome and thank you so much for doing this today.
My pleasure, Stacy, and thank you for setting this up. And thanks to Angela Norris and really all the folks at the firm for inviting me to moderate this panel. This is now my second one I've done for through the Zoom platform. It's a lot of fun. It's a little different. As you see, I've fancied up. I have a green screen behind me now, so I can put all the different backdrops. So it's not my boring house anymore. But I'm really looking forward to this great conversation. Quick reminder for everyone: the conversation is, of course, on the record and is being recorded. If you're not okay with that, well, you can drop off right now. Otherwise, we should have, again, a great conversation. Today, we're talking about responding to the coronavirus pandemic from really three different angles: procurement, technology, and mission support. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, and then we'll get the panelists going. Over the last 6 weeks, agencies have gone from about 42% of all employees who are eligible to telework to now basically everyone can and should telework, whether or not they could have or should have in the past. Now, on top of that, add the hundreds of thousands of contractors who now also are figuring out how to work remotely. And really it became quite apparent very quickly that agencies who planned and were all in around IT and network modernization, we'll say we're in better shape to handle this new surge than those who are, I'll say, less aggressive. In fact, Federal News Network conducted a survey a few weeks back, asking employees about their telework experience, and the results really drove this point home even clearer. Employees said they were facing slow VPNs, networks that couldn't handle the surge of employees. They even lacked laptops. Others said, hey, we didn't miss a beat. We just increased the amount of time we were working remotely from 1 to 2 days a week to all the time. And you saw really the disparity among agencies. And again, we don't know who specifically which agencies, but we know that there's definitely a line. We've also seen several memos focused on government contractors trying to help them navigate through this emergency. Most recently, GSA answered an important question about onboarding and offboarding industry employees. I think that's a key piece. So let's turn that back over to the panel, who really was why you guys are here. So we are unrehearsed, we are unplanned. This is the way I love to do panels, very organic. So I'm going to throw this over to Lesley Field, the Deputy Administrator of OFPP, to get us started with some procurement.
Great. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to everybody for taking time out of your busy day to join us. I know everybody is working on all cylinders to meet the demand of the COVID response. We at OFPP have stood up a page on acquisition.gov. It's acquisition.gov/coronavirus. We are posting all of our policies, our guidance, our frequently asked questions. M2018 and M2022 are the two big guidance documents that we have issued. Talking about reporting and oversight, obviously 3610, and some other resources and tools, and even some agency-specific guidance. But as you can imagine, we are still working through some of the implementation details. So as we continue to get in questions and comments, we will continue to post guidance and frequently asked questions. So there's an email box there, so please check it out if you haven't done that already. I think that the point I wanted to make today is that this moment really presents us with an opportunity. As many of you know, we've been working hard on the acquisition innovation front to promote the adoption of new and innovative business practices aligned with a lot of the work that DHS and the PIL are doing. And so we think this moment will help us promote that even further. I think the urgency that the acquisition community is facing today is driving the promotion of a lot of the business practices that we've been talking about. And I think it's a chance for us to expand beyond the folks that are sort of the early adopters here and really get some of these practices out to the frontline folks who are doing the very hard work to meet all of the demands that this time requires. So two ideas that we have spent probably the most time hearing about, and also we alluded to it in our frequently asked questions in M2018, are the virtual acquisition activities, and then the ideation and rapid product testing. On the virtual activities, a lot of folks have experience with online industry conferences, video proposals, and virtual oral presentations and consensus evaluations. We're hearing a lot about that. And we did, of course, reference that in the first guidance document. One example that an agency used a phased RFP process for, I think it was guard services, and did phone interviews, right, to just very basic to make sure that the technical team and the business team were a good fit. Another agency used video proposal submissions for software design and had a web application for the teams to upload their prototypes. So lots of sort of exciting work going on, and we're seeing more of it. On the challenges and prize front, that certainly can stimulate across industry, cross-section collaboration. And I think a lot of folks saw the Army acquisition teams issued a ventilator challenge. So I think we're seeing a lot more there. DHS and GSA have also been using their commercial services opening pilot to test some of the ideas that a lot of folks are reaching out to them just to make sure that their capabilities and their ideas are what's needed. And then finally, we're working with FAI to put some training out so our acquisition workforce knows about all the flexibilities and all the resources that are out there, promoting the periodic table so that they can really look at what the innovation space has to offer in meeting the demands of COVID. Our DITAP teams are still being trained. The Digital IT Acquisition Professionals program is still going on thanks to technology. And finally, we are working with the industry liaisons, which is a group that we reinvigorated last year. Almost all of the agencies have their new vendor communication plans posted. We've asked them to network with their OSDBUs, with their AIAs, so that they've got a good handle on how to engage with industry. So these are just a couple of examples. Make sure you go visit us on acquisition.gov/coronavirus. There is a list of the industry liaisons is there for everybody, and there's also a mailbox for folks who have additional questions. Thank you.
All right, Lesley, don't go anywhere because I have my obligatory follow-up. And
Yes.
there's a ton of really good stuff here. So the one thing that comes to mind is the risk aversion that we see a lot of times in procurement. It's great that you guys are really promoting this idea of innovation, and especially when there becomes a crisis like we're in the middle of now. That's when innovations really seem to come to the top. Are you guys from OFPP's level or OMB's level providing any sort of, if you will, top cover, any sort of, hey, it's okay, try something. If you fail, we get it. It's an emergency. Because I think one of the biggest things that hampers the acquisition community is this idea of, well, I don't want to get in trouble. If I do something that's quote unquote not allowed in a memo, the IG, GAO, Congress, somebody will slap me on the wrist, and I don't want to take that chance. How are you guys promoting that? Hey, it's okay to try something different.
Right, it's a great question, and I think that was sort of the impetus behind our Mythbusters series. And we have tried to provide top cover there that folks can take to auditors to say, look, if we want agencies to take these risks, we want the acquisition community to try these practices where they can. Obviously, senior leadership at the agency is very important, and we are also working on the oversight front to make sure that they're aware of all of the opportunities that we think innovation presents. So we will continue the narrative to make sure that top cover is out there, because I think it's very important that we use the flexibilities that are afforded to us through the FAR process, and we absolutely will continue that drumbeat.
One of the best things you guys have done over the years is the Frontline Forum. Obviously, it's a little harder now because you can't meet in person, but how are you using that to also get the word out?
Yep, that's great. So the Frontline Forum, for folks who aren't familiar, probably, gosh, I think it was 25 years ago, OFPP started the Frontline Forum, where we brought contracting officers from all over the country in to talk about some of the policies that we had out there or policies that needed to be written. And it's just been a fantastic resource for us. About a year ago, we started, because we wanted to hear from folks outside the DC area, so we started virtual connections with some of the Frontline Forum members before all of this. So we had some experience with it, and we are using the Frontline Forum and the industry liaison forums to promote not only the innovation, but also to make sure that everybody is aware of the oversight policies and some of the work that we're doing on reporting. So we're using all of the tools in our arsenal to get the word out, but we have to keep at it. That's really important.
Excellent, excellent. I know there'll be plenty of questions, so don't forget, you will have an opportunity to ask questions later on. Let's shift over to technology side. Now, Maria Roat, the CIO over at SBA. You've been a little busy. Talk about how you guys have been dealing with this pandemic emergency.
Thanks, Jason. It wasn't just flipping over to telework for the agency. It was also responding to the Paycheck Protection Program, the economic injury, disaster loan programs, that 10K advance. So, looking at it from two perspectives on the mission side. One, we flipped over seamlessly to telework. That went off. All the work we've done over the last 3+ years, we flipped over without missing a beat, which was great. All the collaboration tools that we've put in place, being able to scale quickly, all of that worked, which I was pretty proud of that. We had people still asking for printers, You know, there was a lot of noise, the sky's falling, we all need printers, but it turns out 4 people got approved for requests for printing at home, and that was it. We all know the cybersecurity risks around printing at home, the types of printers, leaving papers around, those kind of things. So flipping over to telework was pretty seamlessly. Saw a huge uptick, and I can see the 12-month, you know, run of data and how we're using our collaboration tools, and the use of that went way, way up. And I was pretty excited about that, to see people really start to embrace that where they've just never done that before. The second piece of that, and really goes more to your question, I think, spinning up on the mission side with being able to support the legislation that came through very fast and very quickly. I think with our partners and with the team we have, we were able to build some things very quickly. We stood up a lender gateway for the Paycheck Protection Portal in 8 days. For those small lenders, community banks, mid-sized banks that had never done business with SBA before. We've got our regular portal that we use for all of those folks that those lenders that we worked with all the time. There's about 1,800 or so of those. So that was up and running, but we had this whole field of smaller, mid-sized community lenders and banks that had never worked with us before. So we very quickly, within 8 days, turned up an intake portal in that, put the APIs in place to the systems behind it, and we were able to launch that very fast. In addition, for the economic injury disaster loans, we stood up a software as a service platform for applicants to come in. The intake portal was up and running in about a week. So 7 days to do that. So we've been able to move very fast. And it's not just the public facing things that we've worked on, it's also internally. We were getting volumes of email to the tune of 10,000 a day. How do you manage that? And what we did was we were able to set up rules based on the platforms we already had, used what we already had, laid it out, and we were able to assign those emails coming in out to the caseworkers, those call agents that were able to do it. So we did all this automation. We were able to turn that on. That's been running, the first iteration of that was about 4 weeks ago. We are now in iteration 4, which really focuses on deduplication, filtering, but it still builds on to the other iterations and really getting all of those volumes of emails out to the folks who need to respond to those in the call centers. So, you know, we've tripled our staff. You know, from our normal contingent of SBA employees. So, you know, moving from telework as well as tripling SBA's staff has just been pretty significant. I mean, this is part of what we do. So being able to do that concurrently and yet put out new capabilities has been pretty significant. In addition, you know, we've had to pay attention to our outward facing properties, SBA.gov. So we geo-fenced the loan portals. So US and territories, people can come in from those locations. And that helped on the cybersecurity front. I'll share with you that when the president tweeted a few weeks ago about SBA.gov, we instantly got 93,000 people hitting our website. The volume that we've seen has been tremendous. And our SBA.gov, it's cloud-based. We scaled 825% immediately, instantaneously. So power of the cloud there, we were able to scale and support that. And it's just been incredible how we've been able to use cloud-based tools and all of those things to support the mission. And all of this is building on the capability that we've put in place over the last few years.
All right, all good stuff. Let's jump in with a quick follow-up or two. One of the things that occurs to me is none of this happens by itself, meaning you don't wake up on Monday and say, okay, what are we doing today? You must have seen this coming as Congress has been developing the CARES Act, as they were putting together the big stimulus bill. At what point did you have that first meeting with your staff to say, okay, based on what we see even in the draft legislation, we're going to be really busy. How quickly did you guys start kind of turning those switches up and getting the processes in place? Even if you don't have the final piece, you know, pretty much change is coming.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think last Friday was 50 days from when SBA stood up its task force. So even before that, there was a lot of conversation going on. Okay, what do we need to respond to? What's coming? The task force stood up. So just a lot of upfront work and planning, but we had to watch the legislation so that we knew the particulars of what was in it. So even though we were planning on the front end and we knew that there were, you know, the money coming in for the Paycheck Protection Program as well as the loans, you know, you got to look at what the language is in the legislation to put the business rules in place. So we had to be able to respond, you know, quickly on the legislation to say, what are all those rules for small businesses, the loans, the 10K advances on the EIDL loans. So that piece we had to respond to very quickly, but we were able, you know, early on to say, okay, what's the what if scenarios? What could we do? Being able to at least do some of the planning on that ahead of time so that we could respond.
And one of the things when you talk about the planning piece, has to be, and I've talked to other people, for instance, at the IRS over the years, and I think, Maria, if you correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you begin your career maybe at the IRS?
I did not.
You didn't? All right. Well, transportation, maybe. Anyways, the point here, though, is IRS, they know what's coming in November, October, December as Congress is moving forward. How much of this meeting did you have with the mission side? Because typically, you know, if you think about SBA, you have your reauthorization bill, or if you have maybe some minor changes, there's not that immediacy that you need today, but that task force had to include yourself, the mission leaders. Walk me through those conversations as well.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, part of it was making sure that we're ready to respond. SBA, that's what we do. We're in the business of half of our business, or a chunk of what we do is about disaster and those disaster loans for small businesses, and for non-COVID, certainly for homeowners as well, those loans. And, you know, so we've done this before with Harvey, Irma, Maria. We know how to ramp up. We know how to stand up the call centers. We've got contracts in place. What was different in this scenario was the large amount of money that was coming in and how that was going to be vetted and distributed. So, you know, the EIDL program was a brand new program. We've been able to do, I shouldn't say it's new, but this volume. And then the Paycheck Protection Program was also new. And with the task force, there was a lot of interaction with Treasury, a lot of back and forth with them because of, you know, certainly the financial piece of it. And the entire task force from a technology side took all of our program offices, because it touched not only our disaster office, but our Office of Capital Access because of the Paycheck Protection Program, our CFO as well because of the money piece of it moving through into Treasury. So it had to be coordinated. So when we started this up back in, you know, early March, end of February, we had to be coordinated in what we were doing across the entire agency. It wasn't just about the disaster team, it was about the whole agency. So getting a lot of that pre-planning, and it was just a lot of work up front with daily task force meeting, who's doing what, you know, putting all the pieces in place. So yeah, it's been a little bit in the making. And when you look over, you know, the last 6 weeks, 50 days, 60 days, 2 months, it's been a lot of work and just a ton of coordination, not just with SBA, but with other agencies and of course our vendor community.
All right, plenty to talk to. I could ask you 101 more questions, but we're going to move over to Bob Costello from this Customs and Border Protection. Bob, tell us about how you guys are meeting mission these days.
Hey, good afternoon, Jason. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. And true, it's been very difficult for all of us, and there's been a lot of changes that go on. And of course, our agency, we have a lot of people that can't telework. You know, we're a law enforcement agency, so our officers and agents and Border Patrol, OFO, and Air and Marine, they're still out there every day. So we made a big shift in a lot of the things that we're doing and how we provide continuous support to them as the Office of Information Technology moved to a telework model. And then also, how do we provide increased remote access for many of our employees? So we went from on average maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people teleworking a day to about 20,000, which was a big increase. And that was a massive undertaking, but it went very well and very seamlessly. And I couldn't be more personally proud of my team that helped me do that. and as well as a close relationship we have with the Office of Procurement. I work very closely with a contracting officer, and in some cases we awarded a cybersecurity contract in under 24 hours. It was amazing, but it's all about partnerships. And I think what we see at CBP is, in some ways, our mission didn't really change. Our customs officers, the CBPOs, they're out there every day still clearing passengers at the international airports. And in that case there, we got a lot of requests from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. How can we get access inside your facilities for our employees that are there? And we turned around solutions in about 24 hours so that CDC employees could now work hand in hand with CBP at these airports to screen passengers and provide advice and do their job functions in a very efficient and rapid and secure manner. Some of the other things that we've contended with at CBP, to your point on security, people are now working from home. So, within my office, we provided, some operational security training. One particular office did have a need. They needed to be able to print from home. They have certain functions where they need to print things, put them in the mail, and get them off to people that partner with CBP on the trade side. And we found a way to do that securely. We'll get you a printer, we'll get you a shredder, we'll get your lockbox, and we'll work through it. I will say that it's been, amazing the support we get from the Office of the Commissioner on down at CBP for information technology. And it has been an evolving roadmap. I think Maria talked about that a lot over the last few years. We've made massive network expansion. That's something that I have worked very hard at. And, things we didn't see any slowdowns on our systems or on our network. And that, again, has been a partnership between ourselves and the department on network modernization with our acquisition team and our contracting officers on writing new and innovative contracts that we can, execute on extremely rapidly and do things that we never thought were possible. I was previously with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement many years ago, and I moved over to CBP in 2012 in New York City. And the first thing that really happened was Hurricane Sandy. And I think we've learned from that how to respond even more rapidly. I couldn't have been prouder of the response we had during Hurricane Sandy, working with now, Deputy Commissioner Perez. He was the Director of Field Operations at the time up there. And we've taken those lessons learned and built on them. I think the other thing that I'm really proud of and what I think that we've been able to do really well is this is about taking care of people. So CBP has a mission to protect. It's a national security mission. A lot of people don't know the full breadth of CBP's mission. It's huge, but we still have people every day ensuring that pharmaceuticals that come into this country are not counterfeit, that they're real, the ventilators, if we're importing them, that they're the right thing. We worked hand in hand with another part of OIT in the Office of Trade and the Pharmaceutical Center of Excellence to stand up a website built on a SaaS platform where people could ask questions. If I want to import PPE, personal protective equipment, for the COVID-19 response, how do I do that rapidly? How do I get questions answered? So it's been an all-of-agency response and in a partnership with our headquarters at DHS. And it's just been a very humbling experience, I think, for all of us, because we want to take care of people. So that's the other thing that's a part of this too. How do I take care of my team that's now going through something that is changing the nation and changing that response? So how do we use tools like video conferencing to maintain that team cohesiveness? How do we work to implement the OPM, Office of Personnel Management, memos to make sure that we're giving people workplace flexibility so that they can take care of their children during homeschooling and all those other things. So it's not just been about the technology that I've had to implement that's been outstanding. My team hasn't missed a beat. I personally, couldn't be prouder of them. but a lot of the things that we've laid down, moving infrastructure organizations to a code base, being able to do things remotely from anywhere when we used to have to be in the office. And then I think too, you know, I'm fortunate to be part of a CIO's office where, you know, we're modeling that behavior, because my tendency would be, well, I'm going to go into the office every day. I'm going to be there, but if I do that, then my team's going to do that. So I think it's just been an amazing journey that as we help the nation get through this, because that's what CBP is here for. So Border Patrol is still out there on patrol every day. What can I do from the IT front to give them Border Patrol, to give them mobility solutions that they know the person in front of them and their background and stuff like that? How can we help the customs officers, the CBPOs at the airports and import, you know, when they're offloading cargo from the ships, that they know what's in that container? You know, that work has all continued, and we're really here to make sure that the officers and agents in CBP are protected, as well as all the citizens of the country. Because, you know, we're that line of defense to make sure that lawful trade and travel occurs. And of course, that's even more important now, because as we know, there are many places that will manufacture counterfeit goods in the time of a crisis. And, you know, CBP is really here to help ensure that that doesn't happen.
All right, thanks, Bob. All right, don't forget for the panelists, for the audience, send in your questions. We got a couple so far. I'm going to ask Bob my one follow-up, but don't forget about that. And also, I was asked to remind you all to fill out the survey that will pop up on your screens. So don't forget about that. We want to hear from you and make sure that this is working well. So Bob, the one thing that occurs to me, and I'm going to shift you a little bit, because when you look at your title, it's networks, it's enterprise, telecommunications. How much has CBP's network been impacted by the coronavirus? The numbers of people working remotely, the ability for CBP officers to reach back into the network, given the fact that, you know, your entire office, for instance, is now working from home when it normally didn't, and that adds stress. Walk me through how you kind of dealt with the stress on the network.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm kind of lucky, you know, titles kind of merge and I cover a lot of technologies, but on the network front, we've been through, I've been in this role for about 2.5 years. We undertook a pretty big modernization effort when I first stepped into the role. So by and large, I think we've had a very positive experience on telework. We really haven't seen a surge that has slowed down systems at all. A lot of our back-end systems, you know, the applications that we utilize have continued to operate at a high performance level. Obviously, for our field sites, CBP operates in many remote locations. So that's a constant kind of upgrade. You know, some of those issues were there before the crisis, and some of them are there now, but we've actually found ways to continue to upgrade bandwidth at many of our field locations to increase resiliency that wasn't there before. We have about 1,600 field locations, so it's a large agency worldwide. The other things that we've worked with, we work very closely with our telecom providers to have resilient connections, you know, so that if we lose a connection into a facility, we might have a backup, whether that's a 4G cellular-based backup or a wireline connection. I think the prep work that has gone in through a lot of our resilient efforts under Assistant Commissioner Landfried have really prepared us to be in a much better place than we ever have been. So a lot of our systems now are a lot more resilient. We operate, you know, in the cloud a lot more than we had in the past. So the shift has really been for those 20,000 people that maybe never could telework before, getting them adjusted to that, and making sure from our front that they don't see an interruption of service. I run a dispatch center where ICE and CBP and other agencies can call in for law enforcement information, much like a police dispatch center. So we get anywhere from 20 to 35,000 calls and radio checks a week there. Those people could never telework before. And we found a way that they could do that securely from their homes and provide no drop-in service to the officers and agents that call in, you know, before they do a knock and talk at someone's house or just, hey, I need a license plate check. So that's been some of the things that we've been working on, Jason.
All right, I got to ask the question. You know that. how'd you do it? What was the, without getting into maybe too many sensitive specific,
Sure.
how'd you enable that? Because one of the big things that we're all going to see from this is, hey, working from home is not as hard as we thought it was. And that's a great example.
So the way we did it, there's always, sometimes a three-pronged approach, or, if you're a PM, the triple constraint or stuff like that. First thing is training. You got to train your people, in operational security. You need to be in a separate room. Maybe certain, your neighbors can't hear your conversations. The other thing is providing the right technology. So we do have we're moving to a model of zero trust on our network. And so we did roll out a new alternative connectivity option that's based on zero trust, so that when you connect, you only have access to the things that you need to have access to. So it's a people, technology, and then equipment. So if you're someone in the office that would normally be staring at 4 different screens, to do your job, you may have, one law enforcement system up here, a chat here, a radio console here. We had to provide those same solutions. And so I think what part of it was, how do we become more flexible as senior executives to maybe say yes to the things that we would never say yes to before? And then how do we work in partnership with our unionized workforce? And that's always a key, as I know, I'm sure Maria and others have had to deal with. How do we address the concerns of our unions to make sure that we're meeting that? And I think the other thing we had to face, Jason, is that this is an unprecedented time. Very often when we deal with disasters, it's localized to a region or a state or an area. This is an all-of-country approach, which has taken an all-of-government response that has, changed how I view how we do things and how we react and how we're there to take care of people.
All right, excellent. There's so much more to talk to. So you brought up the big buzzword of zero trust, but I'll let that go for a little bit. And we have a couple questions that have come in. So again, I would encourage people to put in their questions. So let's start with one. This is from Glenn, and I think this is for Maria. Can you speak about how you went from processing forms and documents that were paper-based? I'm sure you're still getting paper sent to your offices. So let's start with maybe Maria, but then also if Bob or Lesley want to jump in too.
On the mission side, we've moved a lot to digital signatures and all of that. The big piece of processing paper on the disaster side of the house several years ago, moving entirely to the cloud and technology-based platforms has really moved us to get rid of a lot of paper. We still have a lot of paper, and we do get applications.
I think we lost Maria, maybe. Or
Yeah, I can still hear you, Jason.
okay, Maria, are you back or no? All right, we may have lost Maria. She'll come back when she can. Let me Lesley or Bob, either of you want to talk about a little bit about the challenges of paper?
Yeah, we haven't heard too much about that. I do know that on the surety side, I believe GSA is working on some of the options related to like needing sort of the wet signatures. So I think, folks are asking hard questions, and we're working through all of them as they come in, but absolutely an important topic.
And I know real quick.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with Lesley. There's a lot of things we've had to work with our Office of Procurement on. Through the years, we've moved to digital signatures, and of course for CBP, we're pushing forward as a law enforcement agency. How do we do digital signatures on things like notice to appears and stuff like that? So digital signatures, I think, have made a big comeback, but we deal with a lot of things on sureties and stuff with the trade that still requires a wet signature. So I think it's kind of an evolving process for everyone, because I always equate it to, I can't remember the last time I signed something, but it still exists very much in certain government specific documents.
I know that also, Lesley, your colleague, Suzette Kent, in the memo around the technology at the very beginning of the pandemic, mentioned about the use of digital signatures. And I know that's been a big push. And I know that suspension and debarment letters are now can take digital or by email. So that's always exciting for vendors, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, necessity is the mother of invention here. So we're working through all these things as they come in.
I'm sure, Lesley, that's what you wanted me to bring up, suspension and debarment. All right, a couple other questions that came up. Bob, this is Rishi sends one in for you about regarding the equipment and technology provided to aid remote work. How are you testing effectiveness? Are employees finding options useful? And how receptive, of course, are the unions to any of those changes?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a wonderful question. And I think the first on how to gauge effectiveness. I think the thing that I want to be really conscious of as a senior leader within OIT, and we don't want to stress people so much to the point where they think that we're measuring more than when they were in the office. You have to be very cautious that telework should be transparent to your customers and stuff like that. I think a lot of times, the best way to measure effectiveness is just asking someone, does this technology enable you to do your job? And if the answer is no, then how do we move through that? On union things, I don't want to speak for the agency on a union matter. I would just say that I find that we have a positive working relationship with our union, and that it's a dialogue. Everything is a dialogue. Whether you're in a contract negotiation, as I'm sure Lesley can, speak on that. If you're not willing to talk, then things just aren't going to work effectively. You have to be able to talk and listen and see how we can move through things. I think one of the things that I've been excited about, and I'm sure Lesley's group has had a hand in this, we have had to make some rapid technology acquisitions. We need more laptops. We need more of these simple things, web cameras and stuff like that. And it's been a great partnership with our Office of Acquisition. We've had to have some purchase card holders go from 10K holders to 25K holders. And that's a big change. $25,000 is a lot to put on a credit card, or excuse me, a purchase card. And I'm really excited about what I'm seeing on our ability now to do things a lot faster than we have in the past. I think we've learned from things in the past. And I think that it's been a great, I have personally found that things coming out of GSA and OPM have been very rapid. Clearly written memos and directions, I think are huge. And maybe Lesley could speak on that, because I've found them very, very helpful.
All right, before Lesley jump in, hold on. Bob, real quick, part of the question, the effectiveness, are you measuring it in some way? Are you, those people who are now working from home, is there some sort of like quick online survey you're doing with them, or some kind of calls? Maybe it's a little bit outside of your world because you're providing the IT, not maybe the mission support, but is there anything you guys are doing to measure the effectiveness?
No, so I do provide mission support. I mean, it's a varied organization that I run, and in some cases, it's if you're running a call center, you measure the amount of abandoned calls. Are calls taking longer with customers than they did in the past? In a lot of cases, I run a very large maintenance program for something called non-intrusive inspection, which is radiation detection, camera systems, and stuff like that. So we're tracking the trends there. Is it taking longer to resolve an outage and stuff like that? Back to measuring the effectiveness on the technology deployed to the employee, I do think that is a conversation typically with that person. Yet, hey, we're letting you telework. You had never teleworked before. How's it working for you? I think that's more of a conversation. And then on measuring effectiveness of how we're completing our mission, that is the same tools that we used when we were in the office before. Is the work getting done? How is the work getting done? Are calls being answered and stuff like that? So that's part of the seamlessness of telework, is that we're not changing at all in any format how we're measuring the effectiveness of our ability to complete the mission.
All right, I know Maria is now back. So Maria, here's your hard question from my colleague Dave, one of the other reporters on. He wants to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, which I know is a sensitive topic. but let's talk broadly. And one of his questions is, how is SBA prioritizing risk, configuration, identity access management, and how has telework made this more difficult? Can you answer, can you offer a little bit there?
Wow, I could spend an hour on that, Jason.
So could Dave and I, come on.
Yeah, you know what? So while we've been going through COVID and continuing on all this work, security is front and center on everything we're doing. So even as we're rolling out new capabilities, security is right in line with that. So doing pen testing, doing all of those things. You touched on authentication. We already have SBA Connect, which leverages login.gov for logins and all of that for our external partners. So, you know, building on that for some of our new capabilities has been relatively easy because we already had it in-house and we were able to just put that on the front end of our other, some of our, like the lender gateway, for instance, to put that up. On the security front, my security team is just, they live for this stuff, because when you look at small businesses, cybersecurity, what's going on in the entire financial space, we've taken down, working with DHS, we've taken down 8 websites, fraudulent websites, 2 Twitter accounts that were imitating our administrator. So my security team is just not focused on the internal, but also the external pieces as well. So just the security operations team dealing with every piece of cybersecurity, we've been touching all of that.
All right, you piqued my interest. Is the takedown of the websites and the Twitter accounts recent, like in the last couple of weeks, or is that something over the course of the last couple of years?
Yeah, this is because in monitoring, so part of what the work my team does is monitor what's going on in the financial sector, impacting cybersecurity for small businesses. That's part of what they do. And they identify, so they just don't wait and react. They're actually proactive looking at these things. In addition, people send us emails and say, hey, I saw something. But those 8 websites were over the last few weeks, and the Twitter accounts were about a week and a half ago, we took those down. So especially we're finding them, we're working on websites, particularly DHS, and taking those sites down.
All right, that's fascinating. Good news there that you guys are able to take it down. And I know cybersecurity in this time is just always challenging. We got another question from Gail. Gail asks, this is about upskilling the IT workforce to support programs and projects while teleworking. I guess it's a training question as much as anything. I don't know, Bob or Maria, one of you want to jump in? Let's go with Bob for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's a good question, and obviously it kind of depends on the different types of IT. There's a lot of software development where they're doing agile and they're already using tools like Jira and others that it's not as much of a big change for them. On my side, which is more of an infrastructure operation right now, it is difficult, and it's also you know, I'm hyper conscious of, we had to respond to an unprecedented event and a crisis of, you know, that's affecting the entire nation. So it's really hard to say, well, we're going to spend 2 days on training or stuff like that. A lot of the times that I've wanted to spend on my, you know, we did a virtual town hall and stuff like that, is talking about the things that we've been able to accomplish and maybe the things that we need to accomplish, and then taking care of people. Yeah, you know, here's all the things that are available to you as a federal employee, the employee assistance program and stuff like that. So some of the training that we've done is making sure that people know about all the things that are still available to them, childcare assistance. You know, CBP has a PT Fit program where you can take an hour out of your day and work out. So that's a lot harder now, but maybe go for a walk. Or stuff like that, taking care of you. We did a lot of deployments to our mobility platform that, you know, we now have an app on there so you can access employee assistance right from, you know, your phone. We've increased the usage of the My CBP app that's available to the public as well as CBP employees to push out information. We developed, we expanded the use of a previously developed app for situational awareness and rolled it out to a lot of the southern border patrol agents, so they can push information in real time to people out in the field that wasn't available before, or to people in their homes, so that you know the chief patrol agent in a sector can send a video to explain, we want people using PPE, or here's what we're seeing and stuff like that. So it is really hard to train people in telework, because telework right now is maybe not operating in the same way as it would be before. Because, we're all familiar with OPM, and it's, telework is not a substitute for childcare, or it cannot be, can't be doing certain things. Well, now we're like, we understand that maybe you have your children at home because the schools are closed. So how can I work with my employees and work around that, and still accomplish the mission? And I have to tell you, Jason, I couldn't be prouder of the things I've seen. And I actually run two separate directorates right now of people that are making that adjustment. And to be quite frank, who cares if someone's kid, runs across the screen while we're in a video conference? We want people to understand that right now, the most important thing to continue to accomplish the CBP mission from an IT standpoint is that you take care of yourself, and that you take advantage of all these different things. So I think that's what I've been concentrating on, is how do we continue to operate seamlessly in OIT for our operators, the officers and agents that don't get to telework, that they have to go out every day, and also taking care of my people so that they know that everything that's available to them, contractor or federal employee, that we're listening.
Lesley, let me bring you into that, because you mentioned the fact that the digital IT training is still happening, and FAI is looking at other training courses too. Is that getting harder to do because acquisition folks are just busier, yet they still have training requirements? What's the message you guys are sending?
Right. So acquisition workforce, of course, is one of our top priorities. And I know our administrator, Mike Wooten, is very interested in the Acquisition Workforce 2025 initiative, which we started before the pandemic got here. So we're starting to think about kind of what that looks like again. But we've worked really closely with FAI on this particular, on the flexibilities for emergency procurements and some of the things that are really specific to this pandemic. We're working with FAI to put training out there for the workforce that should be available fairly soon. We certainly have worked with folks who couldn't perhaps complete their training, gave them a little extra time, obviously, to meet their warrant requirements, and for the FACC, the sort of the continuous learning requirements. So certainly giving them flexibilities there. And then we're working obviously with the senior procurement executive community to make sure that the notices get out. There's an FAI Today newsletter where we're putting all of this guidance and information, and really trying to provide them with practical tips, like where to get the category management information, how to find their industry liaisons, how to work with their AIAs. So, practical sort of tactical information. And then on the DITAP, because we really do need to continue our training for the digital IT acquisition folks, that work is continuing. I understand that they have shifted that to sort of an online virtual environment. And so, making the best out of this and figuring out how to use these tools to collaborate with our colleagues in the IT department. So lots of support, many thanks to GSA for all of their help, and working obviously with DoD as well. So it's been a great partnership. We have a good relationship with the workforce, and that'll continue.
All right, excellent. Maria, did you want to weigh in on the training side? Is there anything you guys are doing? I mean, you guys are so busy. Is training still a piece of it, or is that something that is important, but maybe is a couple of weeks, a month from now?
Well, I don't want to talk about the IT workforce, but as soon as we were flipping to telework, one of the things that we put front and center for all the employees was all the references and where they can get training and all the shortcuts and the tips on all the collaboration tools, whether it was Skype or it was Teams or pick your tool, the collaboration tools that we have. So we put that front and center in front of everybody and made sure that that was available early, often, and that as we've rolled out additional capabilities, we've messaged that. So I think for the workforce, less than the IT workforce, but the broader workforce, we were front and center making sure that folks knew how to use the tools that have been at their disposal, maybe they didn't take advantage of originally.
All right, we got a couple more minutes still, so please get your questions in. I see we still have a few in the queue here. So let's go to the obligatory question that all panels have to ask. How can industry help you with your challenges? Always love that one. So Maria, why don't you start us off?
I think industry, how they can help us, they've been side by side with us all along. on all the way through the response on the COVID and all the activities. So how can they help us? They've been with us side by side every day. So all of our vendor partners have been working very closely with us all the way through to the senior executives, from the big companies to the small companies. So I'm not so sure that that's a forward-leaning question, but I'll say that today they are with me in step on everything we're doing. They've been great.
One of the big things I see time and again is we get the press releases, surprisingly, hey, we're offering free this or free that. And I think one thing that sometimes industry misses is you as a CIO can't necessarily always accept free things. And I think maybe let's hit that point home a little bit. If I'm an industry person and say, hey, Maria, I can give you access to my software for free for the next 30 days, that's a problem?
Yeah, that's a problem. We don't look good in orange jumpsuits. Yeah, no, we can't take things for free. It's got to go through procurement, and I work very closely with my SPE on any contracts, any actions.
All right, excellent. I'll turn to Bob. Also, industry, what role can they play? What do you need from them?
Oh, I'll be honest. I just echo Maria's comments. I think industry has been wonderful. I think that I'm seeing a lot of how can we help. Vice, it's been a very positive relationship, and I think to Maria's point too. I mean, partnering with our contracting officer has been phenomenal, because there might be things, the government doesn't expect things for free, but maybe I can run a pilot. Maybe I can find ways to figure out, oh wow, this solution works. We're going to test. We're going to go into a rapid development and deployment and testing phase, and then kind of work through it. So I've really found very, very, very positive responses and help from industry during this time. Existing partners and then potentially new partners as well. So I think it's been an overall good experience across the board.
All right, Lesley, I'm going to throw you just a little bit of a curve to the question, because obviously you guys work with industry in a different way. One of the things that I've heard is how great industry actually has been over the last month and a half. Is there a message that you would have for your industry partners from an OFPP perspective?
Yeah, no, they've been fantastic. And I think, we've developed a good relationship with our vendors. Our Mythbusters campaign, I think, again, has really tried to bridge that gap and make sure that those engagements are meaningful, that they happen in a timely manner, and that everybody kind of understands what's expected. I do think in the innovation front, I think, as I said, this is kind of a moment in time for us to perhaps amp up that sort of approach to acquisition. And I think our industry partners are really meeting that challenge, because we are doing things in a different way, and I think they're open to it. And for small businesses and for large businesses, some of this is a learning process, things they haven't done before. But again, this is the time for us to test and try some of these things out. And of course, we want their feedback. On the acquisition.gov site, we've got a mailbox for anybody who's seeing things, wants to give us some feedback, comments, good or bad. We'll take all of that input so that we can refine the processes to make them even better.
And one important thing around all of this, of course, Lesley, is the FARs allows for a lot of things to happen. Don't hide behind it. Agencies now, this is the time when probably there's a little bit of asking for forgiveness versus permission is okay, especially when it comes to the emergency needs for responding to coronavirus and others.
Absolutely, and we want folks to take those risks, right? With the FAR, it's a really long, big document, but there's a lot of flexibility built in. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that folks understand how to lift all of that out without having to go through every section. So trying to make it more accessible, and I think some of the tools and guides that we've got up there have done that. But industry is always helpful too in helping us think through that. So it's a good partnership.
All right, excellent. I see we're pushing up at 1 o'clock. If anyone has any last burning questions, they should send it in right away. I think let's just kind of go back down the path. I think we started with Lesley and ended with Bob. So Bob, I'm going to throw you the ending question. From our last month and a half, and looking forward, how is the coronavirus pandemic changing the way CBP, changing the way your office is looking at what we'll call this new normal, and what are the things that you could say, hey, if and when we all go back to normal, we no longer have to worry about social distancing or worry about 6 feet away. What are some of the things that I'm still going to continue to do because it's just a good idea? It's working well? Anything come to mind?
Sure. I mean, it's certainly, you know, so my personality and leadership style, I like walking around and talking to people. That's kind of how I get things done. So this telework environment has kind of opened me up to being maybe a little bit more acceptable to large scale telework and stuff like that. I think the other thing that, you know, I would like to keep doing is I think it's opened up the realm to collaboration tools like Maria talked about. We've had them for a while, maybe we didn't fully utilize them. And I think it's helped us kind of bridge that gap. As we work with the generational workforce and across the board, they expect us to have these things available. I think in many ways, you know, I agree with you. I hope that you know, we get back to a non-social distancing environment, and who knows when that will be. I mean, I think we all just want to kind of get through this together and then do the lessons learned. I think every day what I've found is that it brings new opportunities for us to help people, whether it's helping the citizens of the country answer questions about trade and travel, or just the operators of CBP do their job a little bit easier, so they're a little less worried every day when they go out into the field.
All right, Maria, you want to just jump in real quick and offer what's the lasting things coming from the pandemic experience?
I think with our employees, just embracing where they haven't before, a lot of the collaboration tools, and knowing that they can work online, remotely, electronically, that they don't need all the paper, I think has been significant. So I'm really happy with the employees that have done that. So.
Okay, and Lesley, you get the last word.
Yeah, so I think for our community, it's a great opportunity to figure out how to do things differently, right? This is I think a moment where we can take that opportunity, take the risk, figure out how to get the job done and meet the mission need. It's never been more important. So I think we will continue to keep that spirit going and the lessons learned from this and make it part of our everyday culture.
Excellent. I would ask the audience to give you a round of applause, and hopefully they can do it inside their houses and places they're working. So thank you very much. Nice job, everyone. And I really appreciate everyone's time and the good questions we got in. And I'll turn it back over to Stacy.
Thanks, Jason. And we'll give you a round of applause too. Thank you so much for always being there and helping affirm as we move out of the box a little. And we look forward to keeping that going. Thank you so much to Robert, Lesley, and Maria. We do so much appreciate your time, but even more importantly, we appreciate your leadership and your all's ability to take this and really find those areas that we can become more innovative as a government as a whole. And to you all as listeners and participants, our government employees who are out there, keep up the great job. Our industry partners out there, we really need you. The government needs you. Keep those ideas coming. For those of you who are involved with the firm as board members and the program, thank you so much for putting this together. It's been great. Thank you to PMR, who continues to be our wonderful partner in helping us as we deliver these programs. We appreciate that. And again, to our sustaining partners. Look for more information on our upcoming new series to support the behind the scenes unsung heroes. And if you have ideas, again, affirm.org, and you will be having information for that up on our website and sending out blasts announcing that. So we hope you all join us in there. And if you are an industry person again and would like to help us more in terms of being sustaining partners, please do. We are really looking to expand that. So that's all I have to say. Have a great rest of your Thursday in your new working environments. So talk to you all soon. Bye.
Thank you all. Take care.